HOA tried charging me for pool water, so I hooked it to the fire hydrant. The bill, the smirk, and the spark. I woke up to the sun on my face, the scent of lemon iced tea still lingering in my mouth, and a bill taped to my pool float. Not just any bill, a $1,273 invoice, printed in bold and stuck right next to a smiley face that had been drawn on my forehead in permanent marker. That was the moment my peaceful Saturday took a nosedive straight into HOA hell. One minute I was floating in my own backyard pool, soaking up rays like a lizard with a mortgage. The next, I was standing barefoot on my driveway, dripping wet, invoice in hand, staring across the street at Karen Delaney, the queen of our HOA, clipboard collector and neighborhood dictator. She stood there like she was auctioning off my sanity, holding a dry erase board with a doodle of my house, my pool, and the word violation scrawled in red. According to the letter, I was being fined under Article 8.3 for unauthorized water consumption. I don't recall seeing anything about pool water limits in the 60-page HOA handbook they mailed out like a Bible last year. Most of it read like it was written by a vampire lawyer in a windowless room anyway. But over $1,000 for water? What did they think I was filling it with? Liquefied diamonds? I stormed inside, wet footprints marking my path, rage percolating beneath every squish of my flip-flops. My golden retriever, Beans, followed behind with the pool noodle clenched in his jaws like it was Exhibit A. I sat down at the dining table and flipped over the notice. Your recent water use has been flagged as excessive per community standards. A surcharge of $1,273 has been applied for maintenance of shared utility infrastructure. Shared? Utility? My water bill comes from the city. I don't use the HOA's irrigation system. They told me it only feeds the community flower beds. What flower beds? The only thing growing on HOA property is Karen's unchecked ego. So I marched over to the HOA office, paperwork in hand, fury in my bloodstream. And there she was, sitting at the front desk, like she'd been waiting for me. Karen didn't even flinch, just slid her glasses down her nose and tapped a pen on her clipboard. "Ah, Mr. Deacon," she said, all syrup and smug. "I see you got our letter, and the float delivery." I ignored her jab. "I'm not paying this. You can't just make up charges." She raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. It was passed in last month's emergency vote." "Emergency? What emergency? Did someone almost drown in a sprinkler?" She laughed. "Not the kind you join in on, the kind you hear in a Disney villain's origin story. You used more water than the 5 other houses on your street combined. That makes you a risk. Show me proof. Meter readings, reports, anything." She shrugged. "It's in the bylaws." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about water. It was about me. Ever since I moved in and refused to plant the HOA-approved shrubs, Karen had been escalating. My mailbox was too tall. My solar lawn lights were apparently a trip hazard for passing squirrels. And now, she was weaponizing water. She wanted to wear me down with paperwork and pretend rules. But she picked the wrong guy. I smiled politely, and I left. Not because I was giving in, because I had a plan. That night, while walking Beans, I passed the red fire hydrant 3 houses down. I paused, and I remembered something from my old job. Before I changed careers, I was a licensed plumber. And there are legal ways to draw water from hydrants, with the right certification, equipment, and backflow protection. It's obscure knowledge, rare, but I had the training, and I still had the gear. In my garage, under a dusty tarp and a box labeled camping junk, next to a confused-looking garden gnome. I spent the rest of the night brushing up on codes, rereading city ordinances, and assembling my plan. This wouldn't be easy, but it would be beautiful. A hose, a plan, and a neighborhood on edge. By Tuesday, I had everything in place. Pressure gauge, check. Backflow preventer, installed. Connection adapter, custom fit. I even bought a new hose with extra thick lining and heat resistance. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. At exactly 4 p.m., I opened the valve. The hydrant hissed, then roared to life. Water gushed with power, flowing into my hidden fill pipe and down into the blue shimmer of my pool. It was glorious. Every drop legal. Every connection inspected. Not a single ounce from the HOA's lines. I leaned back in my lawn chair, sunglasses on, drink in hand. I had beaten the system by playing by a different set of rules. The actual ones. That evening, Karen walked by. No cat this time, no clipboard, just a pair of binoculars and a notebook like she was bird watching. Only the bird was me. She paused near the hydrant, scanned the setup, and glared. I waved. She didn't. I could practically see the steam coming from her ears. She had no idea how I was doing it. No leaks, no tampering, no HOA violation. Because I hadn't broken a single rule. Later that night, I got an email from the HOA. Subject, pool water usage. Follow-up. I braced myself for another fine. Instead, it read, Dear Mr. Deacon, we've noticed a significant drop in your reported water usage despite continued pool activity. Could you please share the steps you've taken to achieve such conservation? The board is curious. I nearly spit out my iced tea. I wasn't just winning. I was making them curious. They didn't even know if they should be mad or impressed. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a plumbing job anymore. It was performance art, trail cams, late-night lies, and a hoodie in the dark. By Thursday, the whispers had started. 2 neighbors had already stopped by under the pretense of asking about lawn fertilizer. One of them, Ed from across the street, leaned over the fence with the grace of a spy trying not to spill his coffee. So, heard your water bill dropped to 0, he said, too casually. I smiled. Want a glass of iced tea? He took the hint. Didn't press, but I knew word was spreading, and behind it all, Karen. She was stirring the pot, hoping someone else would cry foul, just so she could latch on like a mosquito at a cookout. Later that afternoon, I spotted her rolling by in her golf cart, sunglasses on, one hand clutching a notepad, the other, her phone, aimed directly at me. I could almost hear her internal monologue. Smile, Karen. This might be the evidence that gets him. I waved. She didn't. Her cart rolled past at the speed of passive aggression, and I knew she'd be back. Probably with a measuring tape. Or a priest. Maybe both. That evening, I triple-checked my setup. Hydrant adapter, locked. Anti-siphon valve, fully functional. Hose, buried beneath decorative rocks. Just for fun, I printed out the city ordinance and laminated it. Then, I stored a copy in a weatherproof box next to the hydrant. Just in case. I wasn't just cautious. I was bulletproof. There's a unique joy in following the rules so perfectly it drives the rule makers insane. Karen was used to people folding, apologizing, backing down. I was founding a new club. Homeowners who don't take HOA nonsense lying down. 2 days later, things escalated. I was in the backyard, reading a book about restoring vintage cars, with some light jazz playing through the outdoor speakers. Beans barked from near the fence. I walked over to find Karen, on a stepladder, her manicured fingers gripping the top rung like a hawk on a perch. Afternoon? I called out. She nearly lost balance but caught herself. Just checking fence height regulations, she said. Yours looks an inch too tall. I squinted. Same fence that passed inspection last fall? She waved dismissively. Rules evolve. I walked away without another word. There was no reasoning with someone who treated HOA bylaws like divine scripture. But the next morning, a new violation showed up. Not about water, not about fences, noise. Apparently, someone had reported excessive splashing and pool pump sounds beyond acceptable decibel levels. I laughed out loud. Splashing? From whom? Beans? He hates water. The pump was new, ultra quiet. You could whisper louder. But still, I was ordered to appear before the HOA board for a formal hearing. So that evening, I checked every bolt and fitting. And that's when I noticed something. The hydrant cap was slightly ajar. Not off, but not how I left it. My first instinct was doubt. Maybe I forgot to tighten it? But I knew better. Someone had tried to tamper with it. Probably Karen. Maybe someone she sent. Either way, this wasn't mischief anymore. This was sabotage. So I installed a motion-sensitive trail cam, tucked it behind the hydrangea bush, perfectly camouflaged. I set it to send alerts to my phone. The next night at exactly 11:48 p.m., my phone buzzed. I opened the feed, and there she was, Karen Delaney, wearing a dark hoodie like she was a suburban ninja, crouched next to the hydrant, wrench in hand. I couldn't believe it. She was actually trying to tamper with city property. Just to prove I was breaking a rule I wasn't even breaking. I hit record. This was gold. But I didn't report it, not yet. I had a better idea, and I was going to wait for the perfect moment to use it. The hearing, the hoodie, and the fall of Queen clipboard. The HOA hearing was held in the community clubhouse, a beige building with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of overbrewed coffee. I walked in with a folder tucked under my arm. Not too thick, just enough. Karen sat at the head of the table, flanked by board members who looked half asleep and half regretful. She wore a blazer 2 sizes too stiff and had her reading glasses perched low, like she was presiding over a congressional inquiry. "Mr. Deacon," she began, "we've received multiple reports of your pool exceeding acceptable noise levels, violating Section 14.6 of the HOA guidelines." I didn't blink. I pulled out a printout of the HOA's own noise policy and a decibel chart from the pool pump manufacturer. "As you'll see," I said calmly, "my pump runs at 34 decibels. Your guidelines allow up to 55, and I've had no guests, unless you count my golden retriever who hates the water." One board member chuckled. "Is this about the dog?" A small ripple of laughter moved through the room. Karen tried to reel it back in. "Regardless," she said sharply, "this is about maintaining standards." "Speaking of standards," I replied, "I have something to show the board." I placed a series of printed stills on the table. Grainy, time-stamped images from the trail cam. Karen, at the hydrant, hooded, crouched, wrench in hand. The room fell silent. One board member leaned forward. "Karen, that's city property. That's a felony," another whispered. Karen's face drained of color. "This is a setup," she snapped. "He provoked me." I didn't flinch. "I never touched your property. But you tried to sabotage mine by tampering with municipal equipment. I have footage, timestamps, and now, witnesses." Karen stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her chair. Her hands were shaking. "This is slander! Conspiracy! He's poisoning this board!" But the board was done. The president cleared his throat. "We'll take this under consideration. For now, Mr. Deacon, there will be no further complaints pursued. This hearing is adjourned." As I stepped outside into the sunlight, my folder still tucked under my arm, I felt it. That rarest of HOA emotions. Victory. But something told me this wasn't over. Not with Karen. Because people like her don't just vanish. They regroup. They plot. And when they come back, it's never quiet. Paper cuts and petty wars. You'd think after being caught red-handed at a fire hydrant in a hoodie, Karen would back off. You'd be wrong. Exactly 2 days after the HOA hearing, I found a new envelope in my mailbox. No return address, but the smell of lavender perfume and self-righteousness gave it away. Violation notice. Trash bins visible from street view more than 30 minutes after collection. Cute. I rolled them inside like a good little citizen. Set a timer for next week, 29 minutes. The next notice came 3 days later. Exterior light fixture too bright. Disrupts community harmony. Community harmony? It was a single solar bulb. Still, I swapped it out for a dimmer one and photographed the new setup with a light meter app, time-stamped. Then came more. My lawn looked too dry. My mailbox leaned slightly. My door wreath was seasonally ambiguous. I started building a folder. Photos, logs, meter readings, video clips. My living room became a war room, HOA edition. Karen wasn't enforcing the rules. She was trying to bury me in them. I imagined her, sipping her lemon tea, highlighting bylaws like battle plans. But I was prepared. Then came the best one. Noise violation, excessive splashing. I stared at the letter. Splashes? From whom? The ghost of Michael Phelps. I lived alone. Beans hated water. I hadn't had a single guest. They scheduled a new hearing. That's when I knew Karen wasn't trying to beat me. She was trying to exhaust me. But I had something she didn't. Endurance. That week, I upgraded my hydrant setup. Reinforced the lock. Hid the hose under new landscaping. Replaced the visible caps with low-profile fittings. Then I printed out the full city ordinance, laminated it, and mounted it inside a small weatherproof frame right next to the hydrant. Call it a suburban flex. Later that night, I got another alert from the trail cam. This time, it wasn't Karen. It was someone else, wearing the gloves, hoodie, crouching low. But around their neck, a lanyard. Zooming in, I saw it clearly. An HOA ID badge. Karen had sent reinforcements. Now it wasn't just her. It was a coordinated attack, and it was about to blow up in their faces. Cracks in the crown. The next morning, I printed out the photo of the mystery infiltrator. Hoodie, gloves, and the unmistakable HOA lanyard. I made 3 copies. Then I paid a visit to Randy. Randy was a fellow homeowner, part-time grill salesman, full-time fence sitter on the HOA board. He was always polite, never loud, and most importantly, not loyal to Karen. I brought coffee. "Morning, Randy. Mind if I bend your ear for a second?" He looked surprised, then nodded. We sat on his porch swing. I laid everything out. Photos, trail cam timestamps, violation notices, the hydrant setup, a printed statement from the city inspector. Randy flipped through the pile slowly, his eyebrows climbing with every page. "I knew she was intense," he muttered. "But this is nuts." I leaned forward. "She's not just petty, she's reckless. And if this keeps going, the HOA won't just be a joke, it'll be a lawsuit." That got his attention. "I'm not asking you to storm the boardroom," I said. "Just talk to the others. Off the record. See where they stand." Randy nodded. "You get me one more thing. Something that directly connects her to misuse of power. And I'll push for a vote. Quietly, but I'll do it." I left feeling like I'd just planted a fuse. Now I just needed the spark. Didn't take long. 2 nights later, the sprinkler system near the HOA clubhouse exploded. Pipes burst, sidewalk flooded. The rose garden turned into a swampy bog. By morning, flyers showed up in every mailbox. Warning, water sabotage, know who lives near you. Karen had filed an emergency report. She blamed me, said I was redirecting hydrant pressure, and overloading the system. Never mind that my setup wasn't even connected to the HOA lines. She was throwing mud and praying it would stick. I didn't flinch. Instead, I scheduled a private meeting with the city's water inspection office. I handed them everything: photos, blueprints, video, the report from the hydrant inspector, the flyer, the mystery lanyard photo. One inspector skimmed it all and said, "We're definitely looking into this." Another muttered, "If someone's using the city's emergency resources to frame a neighbor, that's not just HOA drama. That's criminal." Karen didn't know it yet, but her crown had started to crack, and this time it wasn't going to bend back into shape. Hydrant Fest and the beige meltdown. By the weekend, the neighborhood was buzzing. People I barely knew were waving at me from driveways, giving thumbs up, or dropping lines like, "Hey, if I ever need legal defense against Karen, I'm calling you." Even old Mr. Preston, who hadn't said more than 3 words to me in 6 months, shuffled over with his coffee mug and whispered, "That hydrant stunt? Brilliant." But I wasn't celebrating yet. Karen was quiet, too quiet, and people like her don't retreat. They reload. Sure enough, Monday morning I woke up to a new violation notice duct-taped to my front door. Bright red, stamped "Final Warning." Unapproved utility structure. Emergency board. Ruling 17.2b, which of course didn't exist in any HOA bylaws. Karen had just made it up. She was inventing rules now, grasping at anything to shut me down. But it wasn't just about me anymore. That same afternoon, flyers hit the mailboxes. Community emergency vote, proposed water regulation amendments. The proposal? Restrict private pool use. Force all irrigation systems to reroute through HOA-monitored lines. Mandatory dismantling of non-compliant water sources. She wanted total control. This wasn't enforcement. This was tyranny, with sprinklers. I needed to go public, so I did what any rational man in my position would do. I threw a party, Hydrant Fest. I printed flyers, hired a taco truck, rented a bounce house, even booked a teenage garage band from down the street. And front and center, my pool. Sparkling, full, and fed by a 100% legal hydrant system. I laminated the city's approval letter and taped it to the gate. People came, families, retirees, kids, even folks from other neighborhoods. They brought lawn chairs, snacks, and, despite HOA rules, a cooler or two. It was glorious. Laughter, music, cannonballs. And then she showed up, Karen, in a beige sun hat, dragging along a reluctant board member. She stormed up to the DJ booth and demanded the music be cut. When the teenager refused, she whirled on me. "This is an unauthorized event in violation of Code 5.6 regarding..." I held up my permit. "City approved. Private event. On private property." Then I pointed to the hydrant. "Certified. Legal. And very much not yours." The crowd applauded. Karen's face flushed a color I hadn't seen since the sprinkler exploded. She tried to rally support from her sidekick, but he backed away and said, "I'm just here for the tacos." She spun on her heel and stormed off. And the party? It went on for 3 more hours. That night, Randy called. "3 more board members are ready," he said. "She's losing them fast. If you show up at the next meeting and lay it all out, we'll have the votes." I didn't hesitate. Karen wanted control. She was about to lose everything. The vote, the fall, and the victory cake. The night of the HOA meeting came fast. The community clubhouse was packed, more residents than I'd ever seen in one place. People who usually skip these meetings like the plague now leaned forward in folding chairs, whispering, waiting. Karen stood at the front, back stiff, lips tight. She tried to open with a speech, something about community values and shared sacrifice. But the room wasn't listening. They were waiting for me. Randy stood up, cleared his throat, and nodded to me. I stepped forward holding a stack of neatly labeled folders, and I laid it out. The timeline of violations. The photos of late-night tampering. The city inspection reports. The laminated permits. The flyer scare tactics. The attempt to rewrite bylaws without a formal vote. The emails, including the one Randy had slipped me, showing Karen offering HOA irrigation contracts to her cousin's plumbing company. Every piece dropped like a stone. Then I showed them a simple chart. My water usage versus the community average. Not only had I used less water, I'd also paid for every drop that didn't come from the hydrant. There was no abuse, no cheating, just efficiency, and the patience to follow the rules better than the people who wrote them. A hush fell over the room. Karen tried one last gasp. He's manipulating the board, twisting facts. This is a vendetta. But her voice was brittle. Randy called the vote. One by one, board members raised their hands. Final tally, 5-2. Karen Delaney was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Applause erupted. Some people stood. One guy actually fist-pumped. Karen turned pale, then red, then pale again. Without a word, she grabbed her clipboard and stormed out like a dethroned queen. As I stepped outside, the night air was cool and crisp. Neighbors came up, clapping me on the back. Someone handed me a slice of sheet cake. White frosting, blue piping, the words written on top. No more Karen. I didn't know who baked it, but I took a bite. And for the first time since moving into that neighborhood, I tasted peace. Karen returns, with a clipboard and a cat. A week after the vote, things felt lighter. HOA meetings turned into actual discussions. Neighbors chatted more. The fear of clipboard drive-bys disappeared overnight. I even reinstalled my solar lights, the same ones Karen once called a trip hazard for raccoons. For the first time, my backyard felt like mine. But peace doesn't last forever, especially not in HOA territory. One evening, I was hosting a small cookout, just Randy, Ed, and a few other neighbors who'd supported me through the madness. We were halfway through burgers and old rock vinyl when I saw it. Headlights. A moving truck. It pulled into a house 2 doors down, the one that had been vacant since January. I stepped onto my lawn for a better look. A man climbed out, tall, mid-40s, carrying a box marked fragile. Then the passenger door opened. She stepped out. Beige cardigan, clipboard, hair tied back, the walk, the scowl, the way she pointed at a gutter like it had personally insulted her. Unmistakable. Karen. She wasn't just back. She was moving in. I said nothing. Didn't want to spoil the mood. But I didn't sleep much that night. Randy confirmed it the next day. There's no clause in the bylaws preventing a removed president from buying another property in the neighborhood. She can't hold office for a year, but she can still file complaints. Of course she could. Karen didn't need a title, just a pen. A few days passed. No contact, no flyers. Until one morning, while I was adjusting the new LED lights near the pool, she walked by, leash in hand. Cat dragging behind her like it had given up on life. She paused by my fence, pretended to fidget with the leash, then muttered, just loud enough, "Some people let their heads get real big around here." I didn't look up, didn't reply, just screwed in the fixture. Because I had learned something more powerful than clapbacks, preparedness. She wanted another war? Fine. But this time I had. New trail cams, upgraded with night vision and motion tracking. Cloud storage backups of every legal document. A weatherproof box near the hydrant with laminated permits. I wasn't scared. I was fortified. Next HOA meeting is next week. Karen's name is already back on the resident registry. No one knows what she'll do, but I'll be watching. And if she tries anything again, Well, let's just say I've still got the garden gnome. And he's watching too.